All right, let's get to work. So we are going to execute the gap analysis right now. This is a sample case we'll be working with. Recall that as a researcher, you already have your interest, okay? You have an immense interest. There, your unique interest that you want to explore further. So yeah, recall I'm from the marketing background, so I'd like to use what I'm very familiar with. But the principle cuts across any discipline, whether it's marketing, whether it's sciences, whether it's the humanities, any discipline, just follow the principle, okay? So as a researcher, let's say this researcher is focused on service marketing. Maybe he's specializing on service marketing for his graduate study. And he's interested in starting a fast food business after his degree. And then he decides to examine the possible factors that could improve patronage for his fast food products. Here's a problem, a practical problem he has seen around him. That some fast food businesses, maybe many of them in Nigeria or Cross River, his location, are not appealing to consumers, okay, due to the uncomfortable ambience or the poor functionality or the rowdiness of the fast food business. Now, in marketing, these issues are covered in what is known as service scape. Recall that he's a service marketing researcher. So he needs to use the terms that are specific to his field. It's called service scape. Now, his working topic before he started out the research, after he had keyed in, keywords and all that, he came up with this with a working topic that says the influence of servicescape on patronage level of customers in fast food businesses. That's his working topic, not his final topic. So with this topic, he sets out to look for relevant literature and analyze the gap. Okay, so let's say he has, let me end this show. Let's say he has downloaded relevant materials, about five of them, and he has them here. Let's say he has downloaded relevant materials and he has them here. Material one, two, three, four, five, oh, six of them. And then he opens up the first material. This is what his gap analysis template would look like, a blank template, okay? This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. So here's his interest, his problem, just to keep him, in check as he's doing his work. And then this is working topic. So he has downloaded 5 or 6 relevant materials. What's he gonna do with them? Let's see. Yeah, so we're gonna see that right now. So let's say we open this work, this A, and then this is it. Okay, this is the first work. So this is a work that was published by Onoha and Nenaya Doris. Okay, the impact of servicescape on consumer patronage of fuel station in Abia State. So can you see that this is not on fast food, but it has his concepts, which is servicescape and customer patronage, irrespective of the product. Okay, and this paper was published in International Journal of Managerial Studies and Research. Okay, I'm not sure of the quality of this journal. Yeah, but let's just use it for demonstration purposes. Okay, so this is what he wants to do. Now, who are the authors? Onoha and Doris. Okay, Onoha and Doris. This is the abstract. So usually before now, what students would do is when they want to review literature, they'll just basically rephrase this abstract or repeat this abstract in another way. Onoha and Doris examined the impact of servicescape on consumer patronage of fuel stations, and they got data from 150 respondents, this and that. You're already repeating the abstract, which is not necessary at the gap analysis stage. All you need to do is this. Recall you've not even started writing your work, okay? So you don't want to go through that hurdle right now. This is just what you need to do. Just identify the key elements. You need to see the author, the year. What year is this? This is published in, oh, look at it here, March 2017. This is a volume, this is the issue number, and then the page number, okay? It has a DOI. All right. How are we going to analyze the gap? So now, look at what the gap analysis template looks like. Yeah. So we have the interest, the problem, the working topic. So we have all these things just to keep us in check, just to ensure that we are not deviating from what we should be looking for. Now here is the gap analysis template. This shouldn't look strange to you if you are into research or if you've done critical literature review in the past. But if you're new to this, then know that with this, 50% of your research problem or your research writing is solved. So you have the author and the year, the topic they investigated, the area scope, the research variables investigated, okay? That is, in servicescape, what do they mean by servicescape? Like, what were those measures they use as servicescape? For customer patronage, what do they mean by customer patronage? Okay, how did they measure it? Like, that's what we mean by measures. So in the sciences, you have it as measures or yeah, outcome. Okay, and then you have the theoretical framework. What theory is this study, this particular study we want to investigate, going to be, or what study was it, did he use? Which theoretical framework rather did he use? What were the methods? Well, what we mean by method, recall that in our next session, we're going to talk about methods in detail. Methods simply mean how did you do this research? So you want to investigate this, fine. How did you go about the investigation? So here he's going to talk about maybe the population of the study, the sample size used, the data analysis technique that was employed. Yeah, and then you have the findings. What were the key findings? It's not to put up all the findings, okay? You just want to bring out key findings that are relevant to your own study. What are the key recommendations? We have said earlier that recommendations do not necessarily mean maybe managerial recommendations or policy recommendations. As a researcher, if you're looking at creating a gap from recommendation of other studies, then you should be looking at a section called recommendation for further studies. You would also see that at grad school level, they will advise you to always have that section in your work. After doing your work, what are the limitations of your work? Now, what do you want to recommend that other studies should do? It's going to help someone to easily identify the gap without even necessarily reading your work. So that's one area you should look out for. And then what are the gaps that have been analyzed finally? Let's see. This is going to be insightful. Okay. So we have our study here, right? The first thing we're looking for is the author and the year. So we have Onoha and Doris. Because I don't see a comma after here, it is Onoha. That is the surname. This is the surname. Because I don't see a comma after Nenya, so Doris is automatically the surname. Although Doris doesn't look like a surname, but based on how it's presented in the journal, where you see a comma after a name, then that name is the surname. But if you don't see a comma, then the last name, the name that is presented last, is the surname. So here we have Onoha and Doris. What year? 2017. I come here and I say, I think I should just copy that so that I'll be fast. Onoha and Doris, 2017. Okay, come here. Yes. Onoha and Doris, 2017. Okay, for citation, you don't need to put everything on a it's in your reference list that you can put the full reference, but in text citation, you just do this. What's the topic? So what's the topic? The topic is on, where's the work? Impact of servicescape on customer patronage of fuel stations in Abia State, Nigeria. So what's the area scope? Abia State, Nigeria. What's the variables? I can see servicescape and customer patronage. So those are the concepts that the person, or the key concept of interest here. Service, services, okay. Then we have customer patronage. Recall that we said that at this point you want to tell us what did the person mean by servicescape. So now the concept of servicescape, what was the concept of servicescape to these authors? Let's see. What do they mean by servicescape? Let's see. So they did a lot of story. Yeah. I don't need to read all this, okay? I just have to come here and say servicescape is a physical environment of a firm. It includes the overall layout, design, and decoration. It is also the built environment. Oh, fine, he's giving us some insight. But let's see what he studied as servicescape. So I can see some already here. I see ambient condition, I see special layout, I see staff attitude. Okay, this is what he means by servicescape, right? Oh, great. Can you see that? Ambient condition, spatial layout, staff attitude. He even has it in his framework presented here. Ambient condition, spatial layout, and staff attitude. So I come back here and say, for servicescape, he focused on ambient layout. What again? Ambient layout, spatial layout, and staff attitude. Spatial staff attitude. Okay, I'll just remove this so you can. So how about, so those were the three things he considered to be servicescape. So that by servicescape he meant he's looking at ambient layout, the spatial layout, and the staff attitude. How about customer patronage? Did the what did they consider to be customer patronage? So customer patronage is a combination of psychological factors that influences purchase behavior. Psychological factors. Oh, great. So I see something like customer patronage has been measured by various authors in different dimensions, including store traffic, willingness, word of mouth and repurchase, repeat intention, and all of that. And then he says these dimensions of customer patronage were used against different marketing phenomena. So to him, these are what he meant by customer patronage. He adopted the work of Engu, Baika, Obuji, Awa. So customer patronage to him meant store traffic flow, willingness, word of mouth. Let me just copy this and go edit it there. Let's see. Okay, so this is supposed to be very practical for you to understand what we've been saying all along. So I'm not going to leave it like this. I'll just put that neatly. I don't need to reference this guy because he said they adopted the study from this person's word of mouth repurchase. Repurchase. That's repeat purchase. Okay, so repeat purchase coming here again. I take that off. And then customer intention retention. Okay, great. When customer are retained, customer referral when they invite other customers as well. And then analyze by hour. And then someone else says referrals again, customer satisfaction again. So I'm not gonna repeat referrals. I'll just leave customer satisfaction. So these are the variables he used for to measure the concept of customer patronage. These are the measures he used to define what customer patronage meant. Okay, I shouldn't do that. What customer patronage meant. And then these three for service scape. All right, that's fine. So what theory did they rather adopt? What theory? Let's see. Following theoretical framework. Okay, this is his own framework. But I want to see if he has like already existing theory for the study. These are his results. Let's not go into results for now. I'm just looking out for his theory. So I don't see any theory here. He didn't mention any theory. He simply defined or explained the concepts he's investigating or the variables, but he did not specify if there is a particular scholarly perspective he's using for his study. No, so I don't see no scholarly perspective. It is actually a conceptual framework. Recall that these are his concepts. So this is not a theoretical framework. Okay, this is very wrong for him to have said it's a theoretical framework. This is actually a conceptual framework. It's a framework that shows the concept, how you want to investigate the concept. So here he's saying servicescape is made up of this and that these are his independent variable. We'll talk about variables when we start talking about data analysis. We'll explain what variables are right from tomorrow's lecture. So these are their independent variable, okay, servicescape, and servicescape comprises of this, and the dependent is customer patronage. Fine. Okay, so we don't see any theoretical framework there. What do? We say none. The method. The method refers to how he went about this research. So let's see. It's going to be in a section called research methodology. Okay, I know the location is in Abia State, Nigeria. We've done that. Okay, data used in studies were mainly using a set of questionnaires. So this is a primary study. Okay, primary study, how many respondents? 450 participants were drawn from 3 zones. Okay, so 3 zones, that should be let's see, 450 participants. Okay, let's just write that. Primary study, 450 respondents. Okay, use questionnaire. For quantitative study, you have to use questionnaire. You have to use a questionnaire for quantitative study. And yeah, there's something about his sampling. He said he selected for the 450 people from 3 zones. So he stratified them. So this is stratified sampling. This is stratified sampling. When you first of all define strata, we'll talk about this in detail tomorrow. But when you define several groups or strata for your sample and then you decide to investigate equal number of people from each of these groups. So this is stratified sampling, even though he has not said it. And then he says convenience sampling. So convenience, I don't want to go into tomorrow's lecture. So convenience sampling means he simply just surveyed people who were available at the point in time he was carrying out the study. So convenience sampling plus stratified, that makes it a multi-stage sampling. But let's still just use the exact words he used. Convenience sampling. So there are limitations to this. We'll learn about that tomorrow. And stratified sampling. Okay, what do I need to know again about his method? The data analysis technique he used. Fine. So you can see it's a questionnaire, a 5-point Likert scale questionnaire. We'll talk about this, not to worry. Okay, let's see. Oh, great. He tells us he uses Pearson product moment correlation coefficient, PPMC. So he uses Pearson product moment correlation as the data. Oh my. Okay, uses it as the data analysis. Yeah, I can call this study type. Use a primary secondary study. I can call this sample size. He didn't tell us how you define the sample size though. I can call this instrument, survey instrument, instrument, right, anyhow. And then sampling technique. Sampling technique refers to how you select the elements that you want to study. Okay, what are his findings? So this may not be all okay, but these are just some major method you should know. So what are some of his findings? I just want to put this neatly here so we can see it at once. Okay, great. What are some of his findings? Let's see his key findings. All their key findings. I keep referring to he. Okay. Wow. Conclusion. Okay. All three. Oh, great. All three dimensions of servicescape used in the study were found to have a positive impact. So I don't even need to go read the result. I've just seen that it means all three dimensions of servicescape, that is spatial layouts. What were the three things again he did? So let me just copy this. Okay. So that's all three dimensions of servicescape were significant. Okay. So it means ambience, spatial layout, staff attitude were all significant on customer patronage. They were all significant on customer patronage. Did he give us like a key recommendation, something we can build on? Okay, this obviously shows Okay. Okay, I don't see any recommendations here. This shows that improved servicescape impacts on this. They show that content adequacy offense should not be left to chance if improved. So this is a policy or a managerial implication. Okay, it's fine, it's good if you want to implement the finding, like if you want to just pick it and implement it. But if you're looking at extending knowledge or coming up with your own unique research, then you should look for recommendations that are for further studies. But he doesn't have one here, so I'll just come here and say none or nil. Not that he doesn't have recommendations, but recommendations that are relevant to me, I can't really see. As a researcher, I can't really see that. So what are some of the gaps identified? How do we identify some of the gaps? What do we say? Okay, this study was in 2017. It's relevant, okay? It's recent. So recent outdated studies are studies that are some school of thought say studies that are more than 10 years old, or studies that are more than 5 years old. So for me, it's personal, please. It's 5 years old. Like I like to include studies that are not more than 5 years old. So they should be within the last 5 years. I noticed that journals are more likely to appreciate your study when you use up-to-date references. So this is up-to-date, right? 2017 plus 5. So this is 5 years now for 2021 study. So it's up to date. So anything for me, anything from 2016, 14, unless it's a very important study I cannot possibly avoid, I would include it. But most times I like to leave my benchmark for 5 years duration. But the standard is 10 years. Your study should not be more than 10 years old. Impact of servicescape, the topic. What's wrong with this topic? Recall that the researcher is interested in investigating what? The impact of servicescape on customer patronage in what? Fast food. But this is what? Fuel station. So I'll say different area of study. What do I mean by different area of study? Maybe not on fast food. And then location. So the researcher is in Cross River State, Recall, and here this person is in Abia State, not on fast food. So there's a gap in the location as well. Not Calabar, or not Cross River rather, not Cross River. The research variables, okay, these are fine. I mean, not unless if I have something specific I want to study, I can say, okay, he didn't cover some key servicescape, aspect that he should have covered. But I can't think of any servicescape aspect right now, so I'm gonna leave that. It's not everything. It's not the truth is you can find fault in every aspect of someone's research. That's the truth. There's no one correct research. Even if you've done a research and you feel it's perfect, take it to another professor. He would definitely see something to correct. He would definitely see something to correct. So just have that at the back of your mind. Not all It's not everything you're going to try to make an issue out of. Just make an issue out of the key things, okay? I made an issue out of the area, we call it area of study, like fast food. He's studying fuel stations. I'm concerned on fast food. Or do I say industry? Yeah. I say different. Let me not use area. Let me say different industry. I think that's much better. Different industry of study or different industry, just to reduce word count. So not on fast food. Location was not in Cross River State. No theoretical basis. Theoretical? Theory. Theoretical framework. None. Recall that what he had there was a conceptual framework, not a theoretical framework. A theoretical framework is theories you've identified that you want to work with, theories that can inform your studies. So he only gave us a conceptual framework, but he called it theoretical framework. So that's usually mixed up by so many young researchers or even some older ones. They tend to mix up theoretical framework with conceptual framework. Okay. So what's the method? Is there a problem with the method? It's a primary study. Okay, as a researcher, let me say I'm also interested in a primary study, so no problem. 450 respondent, okay, no issues. Questionnaire. Hmm. So if I'm looking at, let's say, using a qualitative study for this, I can fault this. I can say the researcher made use of questionnaire. Now remember that questionnaire just gives you only just have to pick the options that are given to you, okay? But if it's an interview, if I decide to investigate, like I want to have quite a handful of consumers, and then I want to ask them, what exactly do you want? I mean, if you go to a restaurant, what do you look out for? And I'm not expecting them to just give me options. I want them to express themselves, like give me in-depth insights because I want to start a business. Then I can fault this, that even though they use 450 respondents, okay, the use of questionnaire is not robust enough because questionnaire have the limitation of giving you in-depth, it doesn't give you some in-depth insights that you'd like to have. The data analysis, it's correlation. We're going to talk, remember we have data analysis as part of this bootcamp, okay? But correlation simply measures relationship. So like saying what's the relationship between servicescape and customer patronage. But I'm interested in seeing the impact. I just don't want to know the relationship alone. I want to see what will happen if something happens to a particular, if I don't pay attention to a particular servicescape attribute, like maybe I don't pay attention to the ambient, what's going to happen to my customer patronage? And I want to see that. So I do not have to use correlation. I may have to use a different level of analysis, okay? So I'll just leave that for now. For now, let's just use this. And then there's no key recommendation. I'm not going to put that as a gap. The findings, he found that all three dimensions were useful. Okay, that's fine. So for now, I have 3 gaps from this study. I can go further to do the same thing for study, do the next study B, C, D, E, and E. You get? I can do it for all of them. So actually, that has been done. So let me show you what the study actually looks like the real life study, the real life gap analysis for this. I just wanted to show you how the researcher got to do the gap analysis so it doesn't confuse you. But now take a look at this. I have to increase the size. Now take a look at this. Great. Great. Can you see this? Can you see this? So this is the study. Gap analysis on service scape and customer satisfaction in fast food restaurants. It was a study by Onoha and Doris. They investigated the impact of this, just like we did. Area of scope, southeastern Nigeria, Abia State. Okay, service scape considered. Can you see this? He did the same thing. Theoretical framework, none. Exactly. This researcher knows the difference between theoretical framework and conceptual framework. His sampling frame, 450 consumers, great. Sampling technique, convenience. Analysis, Pearson. Can you see how easy this is? The findings that ambient this and this had positive impact on customer patronage. Were there key recommendations? None that interested him as well. So this is not my study. This is actually a study from one of our graduate trainees. So you can see it's very impressive. Okay. What's the gap? He identified that it has a different location. There's a different case study. To him, case study means the first station, whereas he's focused on fast food. Inappropriate data analysis technique. Can you see? He used correlation rather than regression analysis to measure impact. The study says impact. When you're using impact, I mean, you don't use correlation, use regression. He even faulted that. And then he said this theory is not underpinned by existing theoretical framework. And then there is a need, he found that there's a need to duplicate this theory in the hospitality industry with reference to restaurants in Calabar. So other theories, he did the same thing for other theories, other studies, as you can see. He had, let's see how many studies he did this for. He did this for about. So with this table, it's easy for you to just look for what you want, put it up there, and then try to identify the gap based on what the researchers have done. Wow, he has quite a lot of studies. Oh, wow, he has 17 studies, 17 relevant studies, okay? And then um he got the gap analysis for all of them. So I'm seeing the pattern here. The theoretical framework section, which is the second to the last column, has new, 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 new. Okay. Further study should. Okay. Oh, it's a recommendation study. Okay, the recommendation area that has all the new there. Okay, it's a recommendation that has all the new. Okay, how about theoretical framework? Oh, this is the theoretical framework. This is the theoretical framework. Let's see if there are other theories he has there. If some, oh great. So one study has a theoretical framework. Can you see? The SOR theory and Bittner service-scape model. So imagine that this person didn't know that this kind of theory existed. But because of the gap analysis, he now knows that there's something called stimulus organism response and Bittner service-scape. So he will just read further and see if it applies to his work, and then he can add to it. Let's see. Another person used the service-scape model again. So it shows that there's something about that framework on this subject matter. So that's it. So fine. Now he has identified the gap, okay, in the last section as we've seen, for all the studies. How do you present it? Do you recall the steps of writing the 1 to 2 page rationale, the topic rationale, and or concept notes? Do you recall? Let's do it practically. Now look at this. Research topic rationale. So he wrote a rationale based on the gap he has identified. He now has an idea of what he wants to research on and the questions he wants to research on. So he started. Step 1 says, explain the extent to which there are existing studies on your subject, if you recall that slide. The subject, service-scape and customer satisfaction, has been given substantial attention by researchers due to the growing importance of the service environment and its likelihood to induce customer patronage, satisfaction, and loyalty. Yeah, So I think this is explanatory, maybe because it's in my field, but while you're writing, try to write using the language of your field. Yes, in as much as it should be understood by a layman, in as much as it should be simple enough, use the language of your field so that they know that you're knowledgeable about your field, okay? Use the jargons. I would like to say the word jargon. Use the jargons in your field because every field has its jargons. Use the jargons in your field. And then step 2. So here he has told us that there are quite, substantial attention. This is the key word for me. Substantial attention has been paid to the importance of service environment and how it affects customer patronage, satisfaction, and loyalty. Step 2 says provide a brief empirical review or mention to back up this step. You've told us that substantial attention has been paid by researchers. Researchers like who? I mean, what did they do? Do you recall that we said you can mention them instead of just telling us everything they've done? Accordingly, researchers around the world, like who? Look at them. Researchers around the world. The next question I would have asked if I'm reading what is researchers around the world like who? He has given them to me. Onoha and Doris, Rai, this person, and Hajit have conducted various studies aimed at determining the correlation between servicescape and customer satisfaction, as well as the impact of servicescape on customer satisfaction. So they did relationship and some of them also did impact in various industries such as what? Banking, retail, public service, tourism, and hospitality. So what he's telling us is that if I go to the work of these people, I'm going to see this. So he didn't need to tell me, oh no, I did this and did it. He has already done that in the gap analysis. Just give us a brief. Let's know what it looks like. Step 3, execute the gap analysis from the empirical work. So a thorough scrutiny, he went further to say, a thorough scrutiny of existing research on servicescape and customer satisfaction reveals a number of study gaps that call for further research in this regard. What are the gaps? Recall we have 3 types of gap, right? For this one, since it's looking at the empirical work here, it's not going to be the practical gap. The practical gap is already I already stated that at the beginning somewhere, where we said it's, look at it here. Okay, not this paper. But the practical gap, we mentioned it from the beginning that he has observed that so many restaurants in Calabar are quite rowdy. It's quite uncomfortable for consumers and they may not want to patronize again and they're not satisfied. That's a practical gap, okay? Now, empirical gap. He now tells us, from existing literature, it has been observed that most of the studies on servicescape and customer satisfaction were done in Asian and East African countries. Can you see? He has given us a gap on the location, Asia and East Africa, such as what? He mentioned the countries, Kenya, India, Ethiopia, Turkey, Malawi, Sri Lanka, China, Indonesia. And then he gave us the people who did those studies. While a few were done in West African countries such as Nigeria and Ghana. So Onoha and Doris, the first work we did was in Nigeria. Can you see? So a lot of them were done in other countries, but very few on Nigeria. So he said, thus constituting a huge geographical gap. He now mentioned another gap that I call the theoretical gap. He said another gap observed in the literature were that most studies conducted were not underpinned by an existing theoretical framework, thereby failing to connect research with theoretical evidence established by previous scholars. And then he mentioned the studies that failed to do that. Look at these. But you will notice that he did not put the study that used servicescape. Let's see one of the studies that used servicescape, if it's included there. Let's see one of the studies that use servicescape. Aha, like Arafin used servicescape model. Arafin and Kamau used servicescape model. So I don't expect to see them in that gap. Arafin. Can you see? Arafin is not here and Kamau is not here as well. So he has told us that most of the studies did not use an existing theory. I could go further to say, if I'm the one writing this, I'll go further to say, whereas existing theories such as the service-scape model by Bittner. I can't recall the year, but I think it's in the 19 something. Let's say I'm just saying 1972 by Bittner. Whereas existing theories, such as the service-scape model by Bittner, could provide great insight into the subject matter investigated. You see, I could go further to say this so that they know that, I've also identified some theories that could have helped. What's the conceptual gap here? There's something I call conceptual gap. Yeah. So he now said the conceptual gap had to do with the concepts, okay? So it's still like the empirical, it's still an aspect of the empirical gap. But I just had to bring it out as a conceptual gap. Like he's now trying to use some of the parameter of the study variables or some of the concepts that were used. He said similarly in some studies, the parameters like service-scape, customer satisfaction were not precisely specified and defined, like it wasn't clearly defined. He mentioned those studies that didn't really define it. While in others, important aspects of the methodology, such as sampling technique, was missing, or the sample size was too small to yield a generalizable finding. He mentioned such studies. Also, some of the studies, he mentioned them, were conducted using case studies like fuel station, shopping malls, educational institutions, bank, and hotel, which is very different from the case study of the proposed research, that is fast food restaurants. So you just make the point is make a case out of the gap you have identified. Make a case out of it. Now, what other gap did he identify from recommendation for further studies? He said, in the light of the above study gap, a number of researchers, such as this person, this person, this person, have acknowledged the need for the conduct of further research on the impact of service-scape. Here's where I'm reading. On the impact of service-scape on customer satisfaction in order to strengthen the applicability of their findings and to fill possible gaps in those studies. So what he's saying is that these researchers, Shashikala, Kamu, Tukera, they all said there is a need for further studies. So let's see one of them. For example, let's see this Shashikala. Let's go to his work and see the Shashikala. What did Shashikala say about that? Okay, I'm just scrolling, looking for Shashikala. What a name, Shashikala. Okay. Oh, great. So, can you see this? This section, recall that this section is the recommendation. Studies with larger sample on other retail formats are necessary in the Indian context. Also, further studies may analyze the relative importance of different service-scape elements in enhancing consumers' loyalty. So you can see that they have said something like more studies should look at how it affects loyalty, okay? And more studies should focus on other retail formats. What was their own retail format? For them, they use shopping malls. So the researcher here wants to use fast food. Is that not a retail format? Great. And he made a case out of it. Like he backed up the reason for doing his research, that other studies have acknowledged that there's a need for this kind of research. So I hope you can see how you can use suggestion for further studies from other people's work to make a case for your research. The next step says, introduce your topic based on the gaps identified. He then said, on the basis of this suggestion and the researcher's personal interests, the present study is proposed to investigate service-scape and customer satisfaction in fast food restaurants in Calabar municipality of Cross River State, Nigeria. So what are the possible questions he could ask? He has identified some very important, by looking at the concepts that were used by other people. He has now identified some very important concepts that maybe other researchers have said, oh, they should focus more on this concept, or this concept has more significance, or something like that. He then said, the research should be geared towards providing answers to the following question. To what extent do ambient conditions influence customer satisfaction in fast food restaurants? To what extent do spatial layouts and functionality affect? To what extent does social factors affect customer satisfaction? And then signs, symbols, and artifacts. So you can see that some of the research did not use signs, symbols, and artifacts. But from his review of maybe service-scape model or things, this may have been mentioned and they didn't mention it, but now he wants to mention it, meaning he has something new to add. All right, so we hope this helps you in defining your gap, writing your statement of problem, and coming up with possible research question for your study. Yes. So for those of us in core scientific areas like medicine, public health, and what have you, maybe the other aspects, the other research, the other gap analysis template might be a bit strange to you. You can use this if you're looking if you're looking at extracting data that is works from other people, whether it's a clinical trial or anything, if you're looking at extracting data from an experimental study, then this is what your gap analysis should look like. This is what the heading should look like. Have the authors, the dates, the country, the focus of study, the study design. What was it? Was it an RCT, quasi, Expo, B&A? You know, have it clearly explained. Is it appropriate for the aim of the study? Did they do it well? Was their theoretical framework explicit? You can see theoretical framework is still coming in here. Remember I said the principles of research cut across all fields. Who are the participants who were recruited for the study? Was it done randomly, or what was the randomization like? Was it well represented? Did you have informed consent? Things like that. The intervention, what was it? When did it happen? Where? By whom? How? What was the outcome you measured? Okay, what was the data collection methods? What were the measures? What were the subjective or the objective measures you wanted to use? Like for the other study, the measures of customer satisfaction were the loyalty, the repurchase, things like that. Now, the validity and the reliability of the instrument, I mean, how did you do it? So you want to look at these aspects if you're in core scientific area. The result, what was the result like? Analyze the result clearly. Were there statistical inferences? What is your comment on? As in, give your comment. Your comments can be on the informed consent issue. It could be that this study did not use a good informed consent. They didn't, get consent from the participants, or there was something wrong about the experimental and control group. Just let's know. Give your comments, okay? If you're looking at if your study is on survey as well, then these are the issues you should look out for. If your study is on a qualitative study, these are what you can look out for as well. So this is used if you are working on a systematic study. So this is a step-by-step guide to a systematic study, okay? I just showed you that as an aspect of a step-by-step guide to a systematic study. Okay. We had talked about what systematic study are already during the video types of research papers. So you may want to go back. So this is a step-by-step guide. It's adopted from the Northumbria University in Newcastle. It was adopted by them. Okay, we won't run through this right now. We'll just put it out there, but it's very clear. Like it's clear enough for you to understand. So we'll just put it out there so you can understand it. You can look at it at your convenience and follow through. Okay. If you're doing a systematic review or a meta-analysis. Can you see something about inclusion and exclusion criteria for your study? You have to do all of that if you're doing a systematic review or a scoping review. You have to do it. Search strategy. Can you see they documented the search strategy where they search for? And then justify your selection. Where are you searching from? Then present your search using an appropriate systematic framework like the Prisma diagram. and the Prisma diagram, this is what it looks like. So let me show you what, in the marketing field, that same graduate trainee did a systematic review as well. And look at what his Prisma diagram looks like. I hope I can get that clearly, right? Oh, great. Look at what it looks like. He said he searched Google Scholar from 2017 to 2021. Can you see why I said at Academic Hive, our benchmark is 5 years. 5 years. 5 years is enough time for anything to happen, to have changed in a study. So this is what his Prisma looks like. Okay, so you can have that as well. Then explain your data extraction. While explaining your data extraction, you now use this, you use this for systematic reviews, remember. Then you go further to analyze the quality of the papers, the data synthesis, like that's it. That's how to review, that's how to do a critical review. So you just go through it at your convenience, and then maybe we can talk more on it when we meet. Or you send us an email requesting for specific aspects you'd like to know about. All right, so thank you so much for this session. So we hope you've learned a lot from it. Thank you, and we look forward to our live discussion. Go start a literature review.